Take this, all of you, and eat of it, for this is my body, which will be given up for you.
Me being a part of this parish began a long, long time ago in a place far, far away called Littleton, Colorado. And that's where I was born and raised, and I grew up. And I didn't know what God was doing in my life back then, but there was little things that now seem like really big things to me. But back then, I didn't know. I remember getting up early in the morning sometimes and going to mass because I only lived 2 houses away from the church. We used to love to play over the church because the parking lot was so big. I remember one time when we were really young kids, we all of us kids were playing together and we got our animals married. All of our stuffed animals got married, and I got to be the priest there, and I got to wear my dad's bathrobe. And I never thought much about any of that kind of stuff. And then, as life happens, um, we started growing up. There were some difficulties that began to happen in our family life. My parents went through a divorce. It was a very difficult divorce for everybody. Um, After the divorce, we moved away from my our childhood home and went and lived with my mom in Greeley for a while, and then I came back and spent the last couple of years living with my dad, finishing out high school. And it was in that process of high school that I started thinking, well, got to go to college somewhere. I started looking around. I found a college I wanted to go to. It was really expensive. I said, boy, my dad could not even afford that. And so I um, I went to I started looking around, trying to figure out what I could do. And there was this ad on TV. It said, join the military and get money for college. So well, maybe that'll work. And so I started going into the military and looking through all that, through different things. And eventually I settled in on the United States Navy. I actually checked out the Corps services, the Marine Corps, Navy, Army, and Air Force. And the Navy just seemed to click with me. I clicked with the people who were in the office, and I clicked with everything else that was going on with the Navy. And at that time, my prayer life was very insignificant. I didn't even have a prayer life at that time. I might have talked to God as I was going around, but I just didn't have much of a connection to God. Um, I remember there's a lot more stories that go behind this, and so I'm paraphrasing a lot of this. I remember going into the Navy, and one of the things that happens in boot camp at the Navy is you want to get awards. The more awards that your company has, the better company you are, because the ones that get awards are the ones that get decorated. And so our very first weekend in boot camp, the company commander said, I don't care what church you go to or what religion you are, it doesn't matter. We're all going to go to the church, and you go whatever way you want to go, it doesn't matter. We're just going to go as company strength. And then after that, we're going to get our flags. And the flags were the things that you carried around with you um, as you marched around and won your different awards and things. And so when I got to when we got there, they said Catholics over here and Protestants over there. And so we went to our separate groups. And that was the first time in my life that I got to experience the universal church. All of a sudden, they sang the same songs, they did the same prayers, they did the same stuff. And with all the turmoil of boot camp, that was the first time I felt like I was at home. And it left a big mark on me. And so then after I finished boot camp and graduated and went on to do different things, um, God started working in my life. And one of the things I wanted to do was to get money for college. And so I had to go to this one office called the Educational Service Office. I get there and they say, well, here's some things you can do. And they gave me some paperwork and all this. And that's when I asked, I said, well, what's this one over here? And they said, oh, well, that's a Naval Academy. You'll never get in there. I said, okay, well, does it hurt to just take the card? And he said, no, you can do whatever you want. So I did. I took the card. And I started then, with all the paperwork and stuff that they gave me, I started applying for all these things. And what was so funny was the Naval Academy was the only one that really responded to me. And so then I responded back to them and started doing the mail back and forth and everything. And it was at that time that that God did something monumental in me. God gave me the ability to make up a prayer. And I got to pray my first prayer that I ever made up. It was simply this: Oh God, another piece of paper across somebody else's desk so I can go to the Naval Academy. And it worked. That was the shocking thing for me. It worked. And I began to understand something about prayer. And I started going back to church a little bit. And as I was doing this, my faith began to kind of grow in me, but I didn't really know what was going on. I couldn't have put my finger on it or anything. But I started going to church, and I was getting transferred from base to base. And then I finally got to this place called the Naval Academy Prep School. So for people who are not academic geniuses and get the, you know, 40 out of 40 on an ECT or the 1500 on the SAT, that was not me. I was actually below the bare minimum to even qualify to get into the academy, and they got me into the prep school. And so with the prep school, that's where they take the people who are not so good in academics and beat them up so they might have a fighting chance when they get to the Naval Academy. And so I get to the prep school, and there on one weekend, and when we first, after we'd been there for a couple of months, the chaplain on the base, he said, if any of you need to get confirmed, why don't you come talk to me after Mass? And I was sitting in the pew thinking, what is that? Is that something Catholics do? I don't know. I don't know what this thing is. And so after Mass, I went and I talked to the chaplain, and the chaplain said, um, I said, Chaplain, you said something there in Mass today. It was that continuate. No, that wasn't. It was something. What was that? And so the chaplain's looking at me like, yeah, right, kid. What's your problem? And he said, oh, you mean confirmed? I said, yes, confirmed. What is that? And so the chaplain said, all right, what are you doing on Wednesday nights? And I said, oh, I can't make it on Wednesday nights. He said, well, what about Saturday mornings? I said, yep, I can come Saturday mornings. And so he begins to take me on this personal adventure of the entire Catholic Church, teaching me about the faith and doing a whole lot of work with me, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes with a couple other guys, to get me confirmed. And that's how I went through my confirmation. And it was the first time the chaplain ever talked to me. It was the first time a Catholic priest, other than my uncle, had ever really talked to me, and that I had the chance to talk to one. But he opened the doors of the church in a way that was just incredible. And what's interesting is on Wednesday nights, I was meeting with my Protestant friends, and my Protestant friends were saying, well, you're Catholic, right? I said, well, yeah. And they said, well, why do you Catholics do this? Why do you Catholics do this? Why do you Catholics do this? I don't know. And I didn't. And so then when I met with the chaplain on Saturdays, I said, Chaplain, why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? And so he started telling me about all these things. And I went back to my friends and said, hey, guys, this is why we do this. This is why we do this. This is why we do this. Isn't that really cool? And they're kind of like, really? And so anyway, it began this whole time. There was this incredible thing that was going on, and I was being evangelized about the faith. And God kept doing different things that in many ways I really didn't want. Because one of the times when I went home on leave, I was dating this girl, and we were writing, pen pals, and we were writing letters back and forth. And I was home on leave, and I was going out on a date with this girl, and we were parked outside her house, and we were making out in the back seat of my dad's car. And as we were sitting there making out, all of a sudden I get this little voice in my head that said, well, that might be nice, but I want you to be a priest. And as all I said in my mind was, yeah, right, forget it. I'll never do that. And the fight was on. And there was this huge battle now that begins with me and God. And what was interesting is as the girl went back into the house and I'm driving away, I had no thoughts of the girl. The only thing I could think of, what was that? God, what are you doing? I don't know what's going on. No way, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. I like being in the Navy. Everything's good here. I'm not going to, no, forget it. And so I was on this path of I'm just going to try and push this out of my mind as best I could, and I never have been able to. And it began this fight between God and myself because I didn't want to. And God kept showing me things along the way. And so when I get to the Naval Academy, I get involved in this thing called the Catholic Midshipmen's Club at the Naval Academy. And so it was a faith support group for the Catholic midshipmen. And then in that group, I met this one guy who met this one girl, and he was going to get married to her after he graduated. And they had a friend, and so they set me up on a blind date with this girl. And it just so happens the girl's dad was in the United States Marine Corps, and he was a major. And so now I'm going to take his daughter out, so I had to meet the dad and all that kind of stuff. And what was interesting is on that first date with that girl, one of the things that happened is we prayed a rosary together. It was really cool. And then that girl invited me to go to an ordination of her friend. And her friend, after he'd just been ordained, he was talking to both of us. And her friend says to me, you know, maybe God wants you to be a priest. And I'm sitting there, I'm holding her hand as he's saying this. And it's like, God, what are you doing? I've got this thing going on in my mind, and all that stuff, that fight that I've been having for years with God comes right back. And I'm going like, well, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. Because I really like this girl. And so as we were going on, and so then eventually I graduate from the academy and I get to my first duty station. And then there's all these things that begin to happen. And there's a ton of them that happened where God was calling me to be a priest. And I didn't like it. And so one of them was this one time I was on the ship, the USS Sterett, and we were getting ready for a major inspection. The inspection is of the level that if the ship doesn't do well on the inspection, the commanding officer of the ship can get kicked all the way out of the Navy. That's a huge deal. And there was a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on everything that was going on. Literally, we were up for 36 hours at a stretch. Me and my men, we were hating life. It was total oppression. It was get the job done. And we're trying to make this ship a vintage World War II ship, trying to make it so that it can pass the modern day inspection standards that it wasn't designed for and was worn out to actually meet. And so we're trying to do all these things and do all this training and everything else that was going on. And then what begins to happen is one time I was up for many, many hours. I don't know how long it was, but I had to go inspect this particular valve up in the forward engine room. And then I was walking back across the mess decks. The mess decks is the largest area on the ship where all the crew's mess, all the enlisted guys are eating. And so there's maybe the mess decks might have held 150 guys. There's probably about 100 guys on the mess decks. And it's morning, and so I'm walking across. Everybody's down there eating breakfast, doing their normal thing. And the ship's chaplain, he's Protestant, he outranked me, comes down on the mess decks. And the chaplain looked over and he saw me, and I was in my blue, ugly coveralls that were all filled with grease and everything else I'd just been crawling through. And as I was thinking, I just got to get ready, got officer's call coming up and all this. And the chaplain says, oh, Mr. Wedow, I need to talk to you. And I'm going like, oh, no. Which one of my guys got off last night and lit the bar on fire, killed his dog, and his wife is crying or something like that? I'm thinking, who did that? And so the chaplain comes up to me and he says, you know, I was praying to God last night and he wants you to be a priest. Now, that rocked my world. The only one who even knew I was even thinking about being a priest was one Catholic priest in the sacrament of confession. So I knew he couldn't have talked to each other or anything like this, and I just had no idea where this chaplain got this. And so I was ticked. I didn't want to talk to God about this stuff. I had been talking to God in some of my regular prayers and things, but I wanted nothing to do with this. I said, God, get us through this inspection, then we can talk about it. But when the chaplain said that to me, I did what you're not supposed to do. I pulled out my finger, I shoved it in his face, and I said, who have you been talking to? And then I stormed off manned. I get up in my stateroom. I'm changing my uniform. I'm going, God, that didn't really happen. God did it. I know it didn't happen. I'm just delirious. Something's really going on. I need some sleep. I'll get some sleep tonight or tomorrow or whatever. And I didn't want to, I just couldn't believe that this actually happened. We go to officers' call, which is where all the officers stand at attention, and the executive officer of the ship barks out orders at us, and then our department head barks out orders, and then we go stand in front of our men, and we bark out orders to our men. I knew where the chaplain was, but I wouldn't look at it. And we got our orders for the day, and all that was going fine. And then it was when I got in front of my men that I could not deny that God was calling me to be a priest. He said I was in charge of about 50 men at the time. And all these sailors, all these enlisted men, were standing there at attention after hating life with working all this stuff and working so hard and everything else. All these men had these cheesy little grins on their face saying, we know what the chaplain said to you. And I just saw that, and I saw those grins, and it was like, okay, God. Chief, and I told my chief petty officer, Chief, put him to work. I don't want to see him. Get him out of here. And so they all go off to go do their work and everything. And I'm just burning inside, just going like, God, just get us through the inspection. This is terrible. No, don't do this. Don't do this. I just couldn't figure out what God was doing. And this was just one of many events that God had been bringing in my life. And he did it again, and I was ticked. And so God was at work, and God was doing things. And so we finally got through that inspection. Then we took the ship out, and then as soon as the ship comes back off its first deployment from the overhaul that we were in, we decommissioned the ship to mothballs. So we scrapped the ship. You know, it's a great waste of more like a couple $100 million. Anyway, after and so then I got transferred to another ship. And when I got on the other ship, this is the USS Tarawa. It's an amphibious assault ship. There was lots of things happening on there. That's when I finally said, okay, God, tell me when you want me to do this. And well, then tell me where, because I didn't know where God wanted me to go. And so I'd started to be resigned to trying to do this. And again, I made up another prayer. And that prayer came up on a very important day. It was the day when I had applied. I'd called up. I literally in the morning. I was in California, Denver. The time frame worked really well. Really early one morning, I call up the Archdiocese of Denver, and I talked to different people, and eventually I got to the vocation of the director of vocations. The director of vocations. He was really surprised because it was like out of the blue, this guy calls up from United States Navy, says, hello, this is Lieutenant Wedow. I want to be a priest. Can you send me an application package? You know, and he was pretty silent. And he said, well, have you talked to a priest about this? Have you been praying? Have you been? And so I had to give him a brief kind of quick rundown of things that. And so he goes, okay, yeah, I'll send you an application package. So it comes in, it's about this thick. There's tons of stuff in there. You got to fill out histories, all this type of stuff. And I also had at the same time to have to put in my paperwork to get out of the Navy. Because I was putting in the paperwork. And so I got that package from the ship, and I started saying, okay, well, what am I going to do here? I had to fill out all the paperwork and everything. And it was the day when I had to turn them in and say, okay, God, I really believe this is what you're doing. And that's when I made up this other prayer. I said, okay, God, I'm doing this for you, but if it doesn't work, you better get me a good job. And that was my prayer. Into the mail slot, into the mail, I put the other one into the ship's dispersing office. And it was very interesting because within minutes of putting in the ship's dispersing office, and as they open it up and they find out, well, why is Lieutenant Wedow getting out of the Navy? And it says, I want to be a Catholic priest. That went like wildfire around the ship. And within about a half an hour, I'm standing before the commanding officer of the ship. And the captain then said to me something that just really shocked me. He said, well, the Navy's sad to lose you, but you're going to a higher calling, so I'll support you. I said, wow. And it turned out that the captain was Catholic too. I had no idea. So anyway, from putting from doing all the paperwork, it takes a year to get out, and it takes about a year to have all that paperwork go through the Archdiocese of Denver and all the different offices and all the things you have to do and everything. And God got me out of the Navy, and God got me into the seminary, and I was actually in the seminary before I received my official letter from the Archbishop that said, "You're a seminarian." So it was kind of interesting. There's a lot more stories in all this, but God was doing something. And even then, when I get into seminary, there was a huge difference. I thought going to seminary would be like, going to sleep for 4 years and then waking up and then they'll ordain you. And it had nothing to be like that. It was the greatest conversion time of my entire life. I had no concept of what was going to happen as I walked in there. And um, again, there was so many things in there where it was by prayer, it was by working with people, my own prayer, other people praying for me. That's the only way I got through there. And I know that Mary got me through. Mary did a lot to pray me through that seminary, because I was not a stellar academic, and I was just trying to learn about all these things, and I couldn't relate to things. It was a totally new world. It was like, I mean, they could have been teaching in Greek, and I would have been just as lost as I was on my first day of class, and it wouldn't have made a difference. But God made the difference. God began to show me, teach me, and use other people to help me to get through this, to see, is this really where God is calling me to go? And one of the interesting things that began to happen is when I was in seminary, I left the Navy thinking, okay, I really don't know if I want to be a priest or not, but I got to try this. God's just been hounding me for these 10 years. I've got to try this. And so as I'm trying it, something happened in me which was really formative and changing, and was a big conversion. I fell in love with the church. That was a huge deal for me, that I fell in love with the church. I didn't know that that was what was going to happen, and maybe it wasn't supposed to happen, but I did. And it began a whole new life for me, because when I was in the Navy, you had to know how to put on the uniform and do the Navy things and all that kind of stuff. And you had to be ready to give your life to serve your country, and that's what I was doing. But in the seminary, God wanted to bring about a conversion in me, and He wanted to prepare me to be your priest. And so there was a lot of things that God did in my life. There was a huge amount of purification. I know you all know I'm a recovering alcoholic. If I wouldn't have gone through seminary, I'd never be able to say that to this day. There was a whole lot of everything from demons and evil spirits that had to get out. There was a whole lot of history of sin, and a whole lot of understanding of who I was, who God created me to be. There was all these things that were part of this great conversion that was going on in me. And so, as God was bringing this about, obviously my prayer was growing greatly, and there was lots of different things I was learning about the church, and things were happening. And it became very formative. It became a very big part of my life, because I had to learn all over again how to live. I knew the Navy way, but I didn't know God's way. And so things changed in my life. And so, as all these things were changing in my life, God was preparing me to give my life in service. And so, with all that, then comes the years that I spent on the eastern plains, the northeastern plains of Colorado, um, doing being a priest, serving the people out there. And then God brought me here to St. Scholastica.